What is a sign that someone has had a purely, undamaged life? Not talking about rich privileged people. They assume that everyone has a biological family and has a parent a phone call away. Or assuming that everyone loves or should love their bio family. This kills me. I actually do have a great family, but I have a bunch of friends that don't. I hate it when people say you need to respect your family, or cherish them. There are some really shitty families out there. When something good happens to them, they can truly enjoy it without fear that something horrible is lurking around the corner. Or being unconsciously convinced that they don't deserve it. This is often a result of childhood abandonment or neglect. We did not understand why we weren't receiving the love we needed, and one coping mechanism is to unconsciously convince ourselves we didn't receive it because we didn't deserve it. That wave of guilt you feel when someone actually does something nice for you because it's so uncommon, and you have no idea how to process it. Assuming that everyone you meet in life is good and wants good for you. I miss old me who had similar mindset. I found a way back. I remind myself that most people are mostly good most of the time, and I mean 90% plus on those mostlys. They can just call their parents, siblings anytime for help or to just say hi. I can do that, and I realized that it is a privilege not long ago. I thought everyone had that option available. Oh God, same, it took me a long time to realize how lucky I was with my family. They're all pretty amazing and supportive. It must be awful not to have that security. If you're like me, you come into adulthood thinking that everyone on average is mostly good people. Many more people than I expected were very selfish, and they take more than they give in every aspect in their life. My upbringing wasn't the most sheltered, but as of late I have been surprised by the extent of how selfish most people really are. Ironically but unsurprisingly, the most sheltered people are often the most selfish. I was growing up in mixed environment. Good, happy, modest family. But my dad is prison guard, worked in max security prison before I was born, and often worked with LEOs and criminals. And I have lost count of how many times he told me stories about how fucked up people could be. Hell, sometimes he would show me news of family died in freak road accident just to tell me, never drink and drive, bud. The only people to have died in their lives, if anyone, is their grandparents who died at an expected age. This is me at 35. My closest friends are all still living. Mom, dad, brother, husband are all alive. Parents are still married and provided a loving home. I am constantly aware of how incredibly rare this is, but I often sense that it makes it difficult for me to relate to people my age who have had to deal with far more. This was my first thought. When someone's most devastating loss is a grandparent, I consider them quite lucky. They seem unafraid of the random life meteors that can appear and absolutely crush your life. They are just a little too confident that you can have an endless stream of bad luck. They believe, deep down, that they are, in some way, untouchable. That can come from coming back up from rock bottom too. The knowledge that you survived shit, and you came back from it. I often feel untouchable because so many bad things have happened to me, and yet, somehow I'm still standing. And that it must be luck that makes it so. They remember their childhood. Stress gives you amnesia? Oof, that's a fucking gut punch. Not just childhood, but even most of my teens and early 20s are a vague, faded blur at this point. Oof. Yes. This is the biggest difference between my husband and I. He is constantly telling stories from his childhood. I say, "Oh yeah, I guess I remember that," or, "Oh, I must have done that too." They think everyone is their friend and will help them. Just because I'm gullible doesn't mean I always had it easy. They think life is fair. They think that life punishes people who are bad, ha ha ha. They think if something bad and unexpected happens to someone, they must have done something to deserve it. They need to believe life won't randomly fuck you over, or that there had to be some level of planning or an off-ramp that would have prevented it. Their secure attachment style. My husband is very normal. I have an anxious ambivalent attachment style and constantly feel like relationships around me are being threatened. Him? He couldn't care less. He never questions if his parents could abandon him or treat him differently from his siblings. He just says, "And if they do? I envy this man, lol." Right. I feel like people think I'm unrelatable or spoiled because I had a good family upbringing. I am able to pick up on toxic traits and know my worth. Unfortunately, I am becoming more and more avoidant because of friends I would make suddenly not talking to me anymore with no explanation. I can totally see how the male loneliness epidemic manifested. People who think fighting is never a possibility, and that people who have gotten into fights did something wrong. You've never lived in the ghetto if you've never gotten into a random fight. Yes, diffusion can work. Yes, you can sometimes get out of the situation. Some people are willing to chase you and ruin their lives over some petty nonsense. This is why you can find videos of sheltered people getting their asses handed to them after trying to talk it out with someone. Again, some people aren't trying to talk. That's not to say you shouldn't try to avoid fighting. I just think that knowing how to swing a punch could save your butt. Yes, never turn your back to someone to try and walk away. You don't know their impulse control. Speaking as a recipient of object to the back of the head, it was a mistake from my younger self to defuse a situation between a former friend and the assailant. I thought I had de-escalated and we were walking away, but I got hit anyway. I met a girl who was 26 and was legit surprised to find out that not everyone is a Christian and not everyone voted for Trump. She comes from a very rich, sheltered family. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You don't believe in Jesus?" Had she ever left her hometown? How can you get to be 26 years of age and not meet people with other beliefs? Especially with the internet, lol. I was raised Catholic, and most everyone I knew was also Catholic with some other flavor of Christian. But everyone pretty chill. New York, cafeteria Catholics. But imagine my surprise when I first encountered evangelicals when social media was first becoming a thing. Like, I remember as a kid hearing the statistic that 50% of the US didn't believe in evolution, and thinking that was crazy, because no one I knew fell into that category. And then spending time online and being like, oh, here they are. But that was back in the 90s, early aughts. I don't know how you avoid coming across different people these days. They appreciate small things, whatever it is. Hot take: on the negative side, some of them do not have much empathy, because they have never experienced emotional pain. More often than not, I feel people who have a mean streak had a life where they were loved, pampered. The theory that bullies have a bad family life, etc. doesn't seem to be really right. Another quality is they are usually very happy with societal norms and religion culture etiquette because it never came in the way of their happy living. They can't handle minor conflict. They assume assistance will always be there. They don't have a concept of reality. Think poverty and struggle are a choice. Got laid off. Oh, so sad, now you gotta live with your parents. That's not an option for a lot of people. But they see it as such a negative thing for themselves. Imagine how their parent feels supporting a grown adult. Why do you think there's such large unhoused community? They had no help when they needed it repeatedly. They don't have spidey senses when out in public, or generally lack street smarts. That shit has saved me on many an occasion. They'll walk into areas or down streets anyone else would know not to, and then either face the consequences or someone kind will tell them to get the fuck out before something happens. During a school trip, I avoided being followed at night by a very sketchy dude. My friend had no idea we were being followed and didn't believe me until I pointed out to the weird dude staring at us across a small plaza which was well lit and had people around. Before sitting down at the plaza, we were about to walk across a touristy street that I had no idea was so deserted past 8 p.m. when I noticed the dude following us. They genuinely believe that if people try hard enough they can get a better life, and their own motivation is what's stopping them. They've never had to think about different versions of some event to tell people. They don't have a work version and a family version and a friend version and a real version and a therapy version. They just say whatever the damn thing was that happened regardless of who loses their shit and what happens, and it's chaos. They are happy with their mediocre results. No perfectionism and super high self-standards. No being afraid what other people will think. No sitting paralyzed by a low-stakes task that in theory should be easy for them, etc. If they are very overconfident, to me that is a sign that they probably had very little hurdles growing up. Maybe it was pretty privilege. Maybe they were coddled by their parents, solid friend circle, etc. There are people that get overconfident because they develop that through some sort of social hierarchy. Maybe they're skilled in their field, very talented at something, but I find the former reason to be more common. Not understanding how much or how easy one can lie, getting mad when they realize the other is lying and wants them to stop. It's kinda hard to not subconsciously lie. If lying had saved you a lot growing up, e.g. lying saying you like something when you hate it, just so that you won't get hit or scolded or guilt-tripped for saying your real opinion. I remember going to my friend's house after a party in college. We walked in their front door and my friend was essentially like, "Hey mom and dad, we had a great time at the party. I tried cocaine." And her parents were just like, "Well, that's nice, did you like it?" What is a sign that someone has had a purely undamaged life? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.